Welcome to the Factory of the Future webinar series presented by Syspro. I'm Roger Lunkman, Head of Product Management at Syspro, and I'll be your host. This is a four-part series looking at different aspects of the Factory of the Future and what we believe our manufacturing customers and other manufacturing businesses need to consider in their journey to build their very own Factory of the Future. It remains our belief that every manufacturing business will need to fashion their own vision of what they believe their unique Factory of the Future will look like. And this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all type of program. However, there are a few commonalities that we will highlight in this series that I believe are equally applicable. In today's webinar, we will start the journey by sharing the findings of our latest global research survey entitled Realigning the Links of the Disconnected Supply Chain. Here we highlight a number of the issues faced by a business and how typical manufacturing businesses have responded to these challenges. It's not unusual for supply chains to be under constant stress. A winter storm here, a hurricane there, a labor strike in a critical industry, or a sudden change in government policy can play havoc on how supply chains function. But it's always been this way. Of course, the pandemic and regional instability in Ukraine at the moment has exaggerated the situation. The result is that the market is massively stretched, demand is at unprecedented levels, capacity is at record lows, and there's a sense of urgency to get things back on track. Back in 2020, we conducted a study into the immediate impact of the pandemic on manufacturers and distributors. What we found at the time was that almost 70% of businesses could trade effectively during the pandemic due to digital initiatives such as e-commerce, digital supply chains, and remote working. But there's been a sudden drive towards digital transformation to overcome these future disruptions. In our latest study, we wanted to explore that pledge towards this digital strategy. Late last year, we held an online survey with our customers, which assessed the sentiment of 163 manufacturing and distribution professionals of different managerial levels within the EMEA, the Americas, and APAC regions. The survey was answered by manufacturers and distributors across a variety of verticals, and results were somewhat surprising and revealed four key themes. The first theme was a disconnect between investing in internal efficiencies and a need to improve the external collaboration of the business. The second theme was the chosen digital strategies did not align with their execution. The third theme was that supply chains do not compete against supply chains, especially on a global level. And the fourth and final theme was that the customer is placed at the end of the supply chain and not at the center of the supply chain, yet customer experience has been highlighted as an objective. Ultimately, we found that manufacturers and distributors have an opportunity to thrive and overcome ongoing disruption with carefully thought out digital roadmap, careful planning, and sufficient investments in place. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome four speakers from different Syspro regions to talk through each of these themes. Each speaker will not only comment on what's happening across the globe, but add some regional perspectives and unpack what manufacturers and distributors can do to realign their supply chains. Joining me today will be Roger Franklin, Senior Solutions Architect from Syspro Australasia.
Thank you, Roger. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be able to share some of the experiences out in Asia Pacific.
Laura Ramsey, Vice President of Marketing, Syspro Canada.
Thanks, Roger. It's great to be here.
Matthew Gordon-Box, Product Manager Supply Chain from Syspro Corporate.
Thanks, Roger. I look forward to sharing my insights with you.
And Johan de Toy, Strategic Sales and Channel Development Executive for Syspro Africa.
Thank you, Roger. Nice to be here.
Each one of these speakers bring with them a vast amount of knowledge and experience, which should translate into some valuable insights for all. So the first trend we picked up was that there was a disconnect between the investment in internal efficiencies and the requirement to improve external collaboration, especially due to disruptions in the supply chain. The first findings that our survey revealed were perhaps expected. Over the past few years, 70% of manufacturing and distribution businesses experienced supply chain disruptions, and 60% of these businesses were unable to collaborate with their suppliers and customers in real time. It's actually clear by what we read in the news today that these issues are still apparent in the market today. Just think about the material shortages, material cost increases, demand volatility, logistics and capacity constraints, as well as cybersecurity breaches that have been compounded due to the recent military conflict in Ukraine, as an example. Some experts have blamed the just-in-time methodology for the ongoing supply chain disruptions and low inventory levels, resulting in a disruption and an inability to meet demand. However, there's nothing in the lean and JRT methodologies that recommends reducing stock holding to a bare minimum of parts on hand. Rather, both methodologies advocate keeping strategic stock holding or a safety stock at key areas along the whole supply chain to prevent these shortages and stoppages in production. These effects could be partly attributed to pre-pandemic technology investments and outdated business models. Our research shows that in response to these ongoing disruptions, only 45% of businesses have looked at systems to help address supply chain disruptions, and 44% of businesses have looked at business systems that will allow manufacturers to effectively collaborate with external suppliers and customers. Therefore, the conclusion from the survey: businesses have focused their investments on improved inventory control and order requirements. There is, therefore, a focus on internal efficiencies over this external collaboration. While improving internal efficiencies is vital for any business, disregarding the effects of the ongoing issues across the supply chain, as well as the inadequate investment in external collaboration tools, could have very dire consequences. The real risk is that the supply chain disruptions and ineffective collaboration could have a ripple effect throughout the business and all of its markets. It will not matter how much you invest in improving the business's internal efficiencies. If the external challenges across the supply chain are not addressed simultaneously and adequately. Roger Franklin, our Senior Solutions Architect from Syspro Australasia, has a number of insights he would like to add to this.
Thank you, Roger. Asia Pacific over the last couple of years, organisations have faced challenges as every company in the world. COVID-19 saw companies focus on internal collaboration, so implementing systems that would support their teams working from home or working from anywhere. As we come out of COVID-19, organisations are changing. They're looking at how they've worked in the past and how we're going to work in the future, and starting to put the customer at the centre of the experience. What we saw in the last 2 years in Asia Pacific is those companies that had implemented new systems and technology have been able to quickly adapt to changes and make considerable profits, while other companies struggled to keep the lights on and stay open. What we're seeing now is that as companies have come out of COVID-19, we've seen them start to look at implementing e-commerce solutions or omni-channel solutions. This is supporting their customer at the centre of the experience. These systems are enabling organisations to make sure the customer experience is the same, no matter whether they're dealing with the manufacturer or the distributor or an outlet that they've traditionally sold through. That's an interesting change, and it's enabling companies to speed up their ability to adapt to changes. In the last few weeks, we've seen events in Europe start to have an impact on our global supply chain. Companies that are investing in new solutions are able to adapt, searching for new suppliers for products and enabling their supply chain to continue to build. In summary, now's a good time to invest in new solutions and systems and applications. It's enabling you to move from Industry 4.0 and move forward into Industry 5.0 with everything that's going to bring. Thank you, Roger.
Well, thank you, Roger. I'm really interested in the fact that you've highlighted Industry 5.0, because our research has shown that not every company has even embarked upon the Industry 4.0 journey yet. So I see them facing quite an uphill battle to stay contemporary with their competitors. Thanks again, Roger.
Thank you.
In response to the immediate impact of the pandemic, many businesses looked at building a digital strategy. Our research survey then explored whether the digital transformation was indeed a part of a long-term plan and how it presented itself. From the research, a large number of manufacturers opted to either build a digitalization strategy or a digital transformation strategy for a number of different reasons. Just to clarify the definition, digitalization involves the conversion of typical business processes from manual or paper over to use digital technologies, which should allow much better accessibility to the information. Only 29% of businesses, though, have focused on a digital transformation strategy. But this is not necessarily a bad thing and indicates that these businesses are solidifying their foundations and putting some fundamental elements in place. However, a large portion of businesses feel that a digital transformation strategy is unnecessary as the way they've manufactured their products has not changed for many years. We also asked the respondents of the survey what they had included in their digitalization strategy. And we were pleased to see that around half of the respondents had included the intention to improve customer service. This is a very positive step for an industry needing to improve external collaboration efforts with customers and partners. Yet, we also found that only 23% of businesses included external collaboration as part of their digital strategy, which would enable them to better communicate with their customers. So, with an understanding of digital roadmaps, the next area we wanted to explore was the execution of their plans. Specifically, we wanted to really understand whether these businesses did, in fact, invest in systems to improve the customer experience. What we discovered was a further disconnect between the planning and the execution of their digital strategies. To execute on their strategy, a large majority of businesses landed up outsourcing this to external service providers who had very little understanding of their core business challenges or everyday issues affecting the operation of the business. These outsourced service providers came into the business, implemented their standard solution, and moved on to the next opportunity without a proper handover or explanation of their methodology. Added to that, our study showed that only 44% of the C-level management supported this digital transformation. The digital transformation journey is both time-consuming and requires a structured investment plan as well, requiring top management sponsorship in order to succeed. Top management support is therefore imperative for a business to effectively digitally transform themselves. As a result, only 18% of businesses invested in business systems to improve external support. This poses the question then, are manufacturers actually improving their customer experience? To further compound this concern, half of businesses that responded chose not to invest in any systems at all and chose to rely on current systems to keep the lights on. This suggests that there is indeed a clear disconnect between the digital roadmap and the execution of that roadmap. Without addressing the challenges around external collaboration, businesses face the real risk of ongoing or even more extensive supply chain disruptions. Businesses now have an opportunity to reset for the future and revisit their digital roadmap with the assistance of trusted advisors and industry experts. Of course, the inclusion of external collaboration systems will be key. Next, I'd like to hand over to Laura Ramsey, our VP of Marketing for Syspro Canada, for her insights on this topic.
Thanks, Roger. We are also seeing a focus on digitalization in Canada. In fact, we partnered with a major manufacturing publication on another research survey last year, which was specifically focused on technology investments in the Canadian manufacturing sector. We've definitely seen that technology investments have been affected by the ongoing pandemic. In some cases, the adoption of advanced manufacturing solutions has been fast-tracked, and in some cases, it's just slowed down as organizations hold on to capital because of market uncertainty. We saw that Canadian manufacturers have an overwhelmingly positive view of advanced technologies because they allow smaller companies to compete globally, and it enables them to keep up with evolving customer expectations. And we're also seeing a much higher degree of buy-in from senior management in terms of supporting Industry 4.0 and digital transformation. So that's fantastic news. That said, there's still a majority of manufacturers that believe that while Industry 4.0 is a great concept, it's challenging to implement. Because of the pandemic, I think we're seeing a very tactical response due to an urgency to survive, and technology investments may reflect that. As we navigate through the next few years, I will not be surprised to see more manufacturers taking a more strategic and intentional approach to applying Industry 4.0 tools and technology, instead of approaching it more as a tactical need in order for the business to survive. Back to you, Roger.
Thank you, Laura. So clearly we are seeing a different response in the different regions to the same issues. Our study then went on to look at the specific technologies that the manufacturers and distributors had chosen to invest in. At the top of the list, we can see that almost half the businesses had invested in Internet of Things, Industrial Internet of Things, and the requisite sensors to improve the capturing of process data. This means that businesses are getting better at capturing data. However, at the same time, only 20% of businesses had invested in data analytic tools to support the processing and analysis of the data that they were collecting, while only 5% of businesses had looked at leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning tools to draw any long-term benefit from all this data that they had collected. Analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning are essential to making sense of the mountains of data currently being collected, and to successfully use that information to improve business strategies and further improve efficiencies across the entire supply chain. This is a critical technology deficit. It needs to be urgently addressed so that the data can be used to improve decision-making and mitigate risks in the supply chain. Optimizing the use of this resource should deliver far more useful information that organizations can use to benefit their operations. We do, however, understand that some industries are much slower at adopting new technologies than the others. Business models, as we know them, are also rapidly changing to try and overcome these issues. The classic business model of company versus company to reduce costs is now giving way to supply chain versus supply chain, where the cheapest and most efficient supply chain will become the winner in the long term. Manufacturers today should really assemble a team of companies to offer the best product and best service at the best price. To do this successfully, the right data insights are imperative. You can also see that the uptake of cloud and collaboration tools is very high. However, these are mostly being used to enable remote workforces where viable. Matthew, what are your thoughts on the key technology investments? And what are your insights, particularly in Europe?
Thanks, Roger. We've all spoken about how the global supply chain network is used to dealing with predictable unpredictability in its operations, but it's faced disruption over the last 2 years at an unpredictable scale. Not only have we to contend with the COVID pandemic, but we're in the midst of the geopolitical disruption in Eastern Europe, all of which coincides with labour shortages and environmental challenges with adverse weather patterns, earthquakes, and so on. Alongside these external factors are those internal disruptions related to a changing customer base, scale in operations, the growing complexity of the products, or the supply chain network, along with growing the company. Generally, there are 6 pillars that drive supply chain process improvement, which are cost, quality, availability, sustainability, technology, and finally security. Focusing on these drivers will bring about process improvement in the supply chain. And for me, the primary focus should be on collaboration and integration with the suppliers and customers. In terms of the customers, we've seen a shift in how people shop and erosion in brand loyalty over the last couple of years. The omni-channel experience needs to be seamless and the availability of stock needs to be more visible to manage their expectations. There have been reports in the UK that brand loyalty is being eroded based on the availability of stock, so a much more accurate picture of availability and when stock is to be delivered is required to maintain those levels. With suppliers, during any major disruption, we see a caterpillar effect whereby the supply chain constricts. Manufacturers and distributors look to bring their supply chain closer using more local suppliers, whether onshore or nearshore. Through using collaboration platforms via supply chain portals, providing them with the visibility of the organisation's data and forecasts can increase the integration and allow for better planning and flexibility in the downstream supply chain without restricting it to the first tier suppliers. This should allow the supply chain to become less constricted and increase its resilience and sustainability. This increases the need for data and the quality of data. Just because we can capture and access it does not necessarily mean that we should. The data will invariably need to be cleaned and normalized to make sure it is relevant. All ERP systems hold a vast amount of data which is virtually real-time, and via embedded analytics and actionable insights, educated decisions can be made on the current situation. This data can also be fed into machine learning and AI to flag up potential disruptions and allow management and mitigation of risk. The visualizations available with embedded analytics help with understanding the trends and forecasts across the business, providing visibility where it's required, whether that is for operational KPIs or to extend supply chain control towers. We can see from the report that significant emphasis has been put on cloud computing to allow the ability to work from anywhere at any time. And to increase efficiencies in production, warehousing and distribution, there has been investment in IoT to harness those potential gains. During the pandemic, distribution centres implemented no contact approach to pickups and deliveries using RFID sensors and other means. And these have brought about efficiencies which weren't realised before and are continuing in use as we come out of the pandemic restrictions. I also found it interesting that the approach to automation and robotics is changing. In the past, organisations were looking at ways to reduce costs and the workforce levels. Now the primary focus is related to business continuity and to augment the current workforce, providing the ability to ramp up operations more quickly. Digital automation will help enormously in this process, for example, integrating with distribution carriers to organise and book delivery and pickup slots as soon as an order is placed within the system. Last but not least, I hope to see a re-energised push around data and ML, along with automation over the next year, where all areas of the supply chain are looking for their next process improvements to increase competitive advantage. Certainly, data is at the core of each of the pillars for the supply chain and allows for visualization and management of the risks associated. We will see increased KPIs related to the capturing, cleaning up and use of data, ensuring its quality and impact. With greater visibility, we can move these dials related to process improvement and increase the competitive advantage. Thanks again, Roger.
Thank you, Matthew, for those valuable insights. So I can see we all have a mountain ahead of us. So the last theme that the survey uncovered was that customers are still being placed at the end of the supply chain and not at the center of the supply chain. When exploring the benefits of the shift to digitalization and investment in digital technologies, we found that only 49% of businesses had improved cost efficiencies, while 35% of businesses improved employee engagement and 31% of businesses had improved product quality. But these initiatives had achieved limited success, with only 22% experiencing revenue growth and only 26% of businesses achieved improved customer satisfaction. So what does this mean? Basically, these short-term technology solutions that we just spoke about did their job in improving cost efficiencies. However, very little was achieved around improving customer satisfaction. And we can see the results of that in the low revenue growth rates in some of these businesses. The customer experience can make or break a business. While businesses improved operational visibility through technological investments such as IoT and had looked into alternative sales channels like e-commerce, the reality is that ongoing and real-time external collaboration with suppliers and customers is vital. And I'm not sure that this has been achieved by these businesses. The improved customer experience can be achieved when the customer is placed at the center of the supply chain and the delivery mechanism built around them. Start with the customer in mind, design the supply chain backwards to ensure that the customer experience is the focus point. The customer experience cannot be regarded as an afterthought, and the customer placed at the end of the supply chain, like the current situation is. When these conditions are met, improved revenue will follow. Our survey also explored digitalization and the digital transformation plans over the next 12 months. According to our study, 66% of businesses plan to continue to improve their operational processes, while 54% of businesses plan to improve resource efficiencies and 53% of businesses plan to improve customer service. Future focus still remains on internal efficiencies, which is obviously vital for business growth. The concern, however, is that only 27% of businesses plan to increase external collaboration over the next 12 months. Without improved collaboration, businesses will be less likely to be able to respond to further disruptions in their supply chain. This obviously only applies to businesses running an extended supply chain between countries or even continents. Real-time information, though, is required for such business models, and this can only be successfully achieved with a digital communication and collaboration. I'd like to ask Johan to offer his insights on this and the ability of businesses to meet their customer expectations.
Thanks a lot, Roger. There's actually 2 points that I find quite interesting in these result sets. The first is, given the fact that we've just come through the pandemic, we started, or supply chains were disrupted with a war in the Ukraine. Globally, there's been a number of serious weather events that disrupted supply chains. For us here in South Africa, it's been significant rainfall disrupting our harbors. One would think that all businesses have now realized that their business, or all companies would realize that their business is not an island. And I would have expected a lot more focus on external collaboration than just the 37% shown. If I look at some of our customers, and specifically in the food and beverage industry, that have managed to collaborate closely between their operation and their customer operation during these turbulent times, those were the companies that have come out most successful, that are still fully operational, that have managed their supply chain successfully. But that level of interaction with the customer and having visibility of the customer's expectations prove crucial during this time period. The second point is, I'm actually quite surprised that even though 53% of the companies say that they're going to focus on internal improvements, and actually quite a significant portion say they want to get more improvement from their staff, 61% show or share that they've got no intention of improving the skill level of their staff, or especially implementing a long-term skills improvement program. Now, it's one thing to say that you're going to deploy technology. It's another to say that you want to increase the use of technology from an efficiency point of view. But if you do not invest in actually improving the skill level of the people, then that program or that intention is doomed to fail. Thanks a lot, Roger. Back to you.
Thank you, Jan. You definitely highlighted some concerns there. If the organization invests in technology, it would make sense that they do whatever they can to maximize the use of that technology, which includes uplifting the people. I think some of these businesses are missing a trick here. Balance is key. Improving customer experience will require better control by the business over all of its processes. We believe that businesses should be considering improved connectedness with external stakeholders to ensure real-time information for improved business decision-making. A re-examination of your digital strategy and roadmap in a way that improves external collaboration with suppliers and customers is also recommended. In doing this, internal operations can continue to be optimized. Remember your digital transformation. It does not have to be an all or nothing exercise. Focus on your key pain points as a starting point. Identify some quick wins that can be implemented without too much internal disruption and build from there. Another valuable foundational step in starting a digital transformation journey is to get an ERP system that acts as a single touch point. You require an end-to-end understanding of how information flows from customers and suppliers into the planning, production, and fulfillment operations. A fully integrated ERP solution enables manufacturers to tackle the immense challenges they face by improving their business processes, meeting and satisfying customer demands, and increasing factory output without having to add unnecessary additional headcount to meet these goals. To address the issue of real-time collaboration, a good ERP system will have a supply chain portal for buyers and suppliers to connect with each other, communicate, and exchange data. Supply chain portals are very useful to any company that operates in a complex, multi-supplier environment. Introducing a well-thought-out supply chain strategy will deliver benefits across the organization as they improve and speed up the purchasing and production processes. It's also an excellent means of resolving time-consuming communication issues. And we can never forget the financial management element, which is the ultimate measurement of the success of your digital transformation strategy. Of course, it always comes down to the data. With the right data in hand, along with an effective way to analyze and interpret it, businesses will be better positioned to monitor forecasting accuracy, planning, scheduling, production, and fulfillment operations. We have a food and beverage customer in the USA that managed to thrive throughout the pandemic, thanks to a robust data analytics system. As part of its digital transformation journey, the customer had set up a data warehouse to pull data to the warehouse from Syspro. This allowed the business to pull pieces of data together to speed up decision-making and to better understand the relationship between previously non-related data elements. Because Syspro is built on an open architecture, it gives customers unlimited flexibility to pull data into the solution and to use it strategically. As a result, decisions can be made in real time. And that concludes our webinar for today. I'd like to thank everybody who attended, and specifically I'd like to thank those guest speakers and the valuable insights that they've shared with us. Remember that this is a 4-part webinar series. This is the first part, so keep a lookout for the next one in the series that should be available soon. Thank you, everyone.